Hey everybody, this is Scrap Computer here. This video is going to cover all of the changes on the quote-unquote new Triforce from the old, and my thoughts and opinions on whether it is OP. Now before we get into the new Trinity Force, you first need to know what the old one provided. Now the old Trinity Force had a total cost of 3,843 gold, and it provided base 30 ability power, base 30 attack damage, 30% attack speed increase, 10% critical strike chance, 250 health, 200 mana and 8% movement speed buff. The new Trinity Force costs a total of 3,628 gold, so the new Trinity Force is a lot cheaper due to Phage's total cost being reduced to 1,250 gold from 1,465, and it now provides 30 ability power, 30 attack damage, 30% attack speed increase, 10% critical strike chance, 250 health, 200 mana and 8% movement speed. As you can see, there is no difference at all in the stats, and the overlay is that it is only a little cheaper, but the massive changes are in the passive abilities of Triforce. The old Trinity Force provided you with passive Icy, provided you with 25% chance of slowing your opponent's movement speed. If procced, it reduced your opponent's movement speed down by 35% if you're a melee, and 25% if you're ranged for a total of 2 seconds. Spellblade passive. After using an ability, your next basic attack deals bonus damage equal to 150% of your base attack damage as physical damage. This is a 2-second cooldown. The new Trinity Force changed both of these stats. The passive Icy was removed for Rage. Basic attack grants 20 movement speed for 2 seconds on hit. Minion, monster and champion kills grant 60 movement speed for 2 seconds. And the Spellblade passive was kept but buffed. Unique passive, Spellblade. After using an ability, your next basic attack deals bonus damage equal to 200% of your base attack damage as physical damage. 2-second cooldown. As you can see, these are massive changes. I'll go over each passive now. Spellblade. This was nerfed and buffed a lot. Nerf. On 10075, spellcast effect reduced to 130% of base attack damage from 150. Buff 100101, proc damage raised to 150% from 130%, so it was too weak and they buffed it. Buff 3.10a, damage increased to 200% base attack damage from 150. This buff in Spellblade has made it extremely viable, and this alone could have made a massive difference to how many people chose Triforce. It simply isn't following the trend. Nerfed because 150% was too strong to 130%, and then brought back up to 150%, that's a 20% increase. And then brought up to 200%, a 50% increase. Does anyone see a nerf coming? In the lane, this provides the holder with a crap ton of strength and burst. If the champion has either of these naturally, it spirals their strength out of control. Now any AD carry / bruiser top that has some sort of burst is buying this and outclassing any item you can get, both defensively and offensively. The burst is simply too much, and it scales way too high mid game. It gives strength to bruisers more so than AD carries, as they simply have to buy this and still provide tons of damage. For AD carries such as Corki, it simply puts him in the OP category, as its burst is way more than any AD carry can handle. This match with the Rage makes him ridiculously OP. I'm gonna go over this later. But what is happening with Spellblade, just in mind, is that his burst has increased. Corki was already out of hand and underplayed in my opinion, as his burst was phenomenal. But now, with an increase in his burst, he's in the OP category. Okay, let's move on to the next passive change. Icy removed for Rage. Now Icy was extremely strong if you got the proc. If not, it was next to worthless. This is a buff in my opinion. Although the slow was substantially more powerful than the new movement speed buff, we are sacrificing maybe power for a consistency based passive. The new Rage passive is extremely strong. I'll give you the reason why Corki is so strong now. Corki had a burst that was next to none in lane, but it wasn't that hard to counter him with range or other burst. He had fantastic all-ins, but a single day initiation and he was out of there. He had a slow base movement speed and you could sometimes even walk away from him. But with this new passive, he can stick to you like glue and abuse his start game strength a lot more than he usually could. And escape isn't even enough anymore, he can still stick to you most of the time. Also, this nullifies his short range somewhat. He can kill a minion and rush poke you with that 60 movement speed. If ahead, this new passive means you can constantly just nuke them down when they come back into lane. They have no chance of getting away at all. Valkyrie and just use your burst, which is out of control already, and they must play it defensively the whole laning phase. To me, the only reason my Rage is considered OP right now is because its Spellblade is so much more powerful. If you nerf Spellblade just a little bit, it's going to put Rage back into place. They're not going to have OP all-in initiations, and there's still going to be counterplays to it. But for bruisers, this item is a godsend. Once they're on you with Blade of the Rune King, you can say bye bye unless you have good peelers. I've been playing Ashe a lot, and I rely on them not being able to catch me. That's how you play Ashe. I was playing versus Nerelia, and she stuck to me like glue. I could not peel her at all. I had boots and a PD, and she was still faster than me even though I had Frost Shot put onto her. Once she jumped at me, she got the instant proc of Rage, and with all the movement speed stuff she had on and tenacity, I just could not get away from her. Bruisers can now stick to AD carries / AP carries with ease, as most AD carries rely on their Phantom Dancer and Boots movement speed to outscale the flat of an enemy bruiser's movement speed, as they rarely build movement speed beyond Boots. Now that this item is both fantastic for burst strength and sticking, it is just too viable to pass up. Let's just look at this simply. Blitz plus Trinity Force's 8% movement speed plus the 20th movement speed from Rage's passive is OP versus the backline. There is no getting away from it unless you have a very strong peel or escape. It isn't OP in the general sense. I mean, the movement speed isn't actually like destroying anyone, but it means you can't peel and kite the backliners. The bruiser's weakness is generally the fact they are able to be kited. That's their weakness. I'm sure all of the AD carries / AP carries out there have noticed it's become 10 times harder to get away from all of these people. Like, if you get jumped on once by an Aurelia, you spend your entire team fight trying to get away from her and her alone. I mean, it's just too difficult. There are weaknesses to this though. If behind, the item is very hard to obtain as it costs a jack ton. In addition, if you're behind, you don't really benefit at all from the strength of Rage, as you're going to use it mainly for running and not initiating. This item doesn't scale just as hard endgame for AD carries and bruisers. They'll be outclassed with the standard Infinity Edge, Phantom Dancer, Last Whisper, Bloody, etc, etc. Overall, I think Trinity Force is extremely strong and with some champions OP, but not generally so. The only thing I personally think needs nerfed is that 200% of base damage right down to 150%, where it was sitting pretty. The Rage only works extremely well if you're ahead, mid game or end game sticking. Regular lane counters still apply and you can still shut these lanes down.